over for foids. More and more men are realizing that they need to be property.
Interested in looting and
one day
destroying.
society will realize removing women's rights will literally solve all of the world's problems. Have a nice day.
I'm sorry, do you want to get immersed in our world? Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns! Fucking gender ambiguity! Fucking currency in California shit! Because that's all we fucking know! Because we're boring! We're so fucking
Up yours,
boring!
woke moralists. We'll see
who cancels who!
Why can people be so hateful online? Like, no duh, people hate other people. But just think for a second on why people have been each other's throats throughout history. Some examples are supply shortages, religious differences, and political conflicts. Nothing has really changed too much in the present, but you'd think with the power of modern technology, some issues would be smoothed over, right? Right? Gail Byand's article, What Percentage of Americans Use Social Media on Soak, states that 73% of Americans use social media, with the average American spending 2 hours and 9 minutes on the social platforms daily. To put it simply, that's a lot of people using social media. I mean, doom scrolling is a known thing for a reason. But does that directly correlate to people using it for anything important? Most people at some point have used the internet. I mean, you're watching this on the internet right now. But what are most people getting out of the internet, other than brain rot? America's News Influencers, a research article by the Pew Research Center, states that about 1 in 5 Americans, including a much higher share of adults under 30, say they regularly get news from influencers on social media. This means that a lot of people get their information from influencers, which can in turn affect how they receive this news. Things like the influencer's personal belief to what they are straight up paid to say can affect how news from these influencers are presented. Along with this, politicians themselves often try and use social media to try and get their message reached out to a larger audience. However, it doesn't matter how much a person talks if you're not actually being seen by anyone. This is where algorithms step into the fray, especially concerning people's perception of them. AI algorithms aren't a new thing. In fact, they've been part of the way people use the internet way longer than most people remember. If you ever use YouTube, watch a show on Netflix based on recommended,
What? They stole my schmungus.
What?
or even use the autofill function on a search bar or phone keyboard, you use some form of AI. In reality, what we call artificial intelligence is just predictive text, code meant to take data that's given and spew out words that are most likely to come next. Pretty much all forms of algorithms on social media work in a similar way, taking in the data of what a user watches and shows recommendations based on what the data shows. In practice, this can actually be a good thing. This means that media will go to target audiences and let users curate their feed. For example, let's say a house has 2 people using YouTube, Little Timmy and his father Bob. Little Timmy is your average brain rot child and likes to watch his favorite Minecraft YouTubers. Little Timmy also hates bugs and freaks out at any time he sees even an image of one. Meanwhile, his dad Bob is an entomologist and likes to watch bug facts in the meantime. He also doesn't like video games and would rather read like some kind of bug nerd. If you were YouTube, you want to make sure that both people are happy. You can't show both people the same recommendations of equal part bug videos and beating Minecraft, but Among Us or something. So let's say you take in the data on what both people do and don't watch, and show the media based on that. That way, both people can see what they enjoy without seeing what they don't enjoy. This is different, however, when you're concerning topics such as politics. This is where there is a critical misunderstanding people have about these algorithms, and that is the idea that these algorithms are unbiased machines, capable of being completely fair in every aspect. This is just straight up wrong. The paper, AI Embedded Bias on Social Platforms, covers this idea by showing how algorithms can have an inherent bias, which is in turn exposed to people using social media. The paper challenges how people perceive AI algorithms, stating that people believe AI is algorithm-based and therefore basically an extension of a mathematical operation that cannot be racist, sexist, or biased in general. In response, the paper states that the selection of data the algorithm is trained on, the decision as to whether or not the algorithm is trained enough to be released, and the testing and control are design decisions taken by humans. Not only decisions, but also the data that algorithms are trained on are taken from our history, and thus filled with bias, making it endemic to algorithms even if/when without intent. This shows how people have been ignorant of the bias that exists within AI algorithms. The fact that these AI algorithms have to be trained on what is inherently human data means that they can have their judgment skewed, with the causes ranging from the human trainer's input on what data is and isn't used, along with the data itself potentially being biased. In short, people who trust algorithms on social media to be devoid of prejudice, when shown media or data sourced from an AI that has these human biases baked within them, begins to believe that these biases shown by the algorithm are actually the norm, where the prejudices are actually the baseline for equality, due to the blind trust that they have in said AI to be as fair as possible. Let's say instead you are a flat earth believer, absolutely 100% convinced about it. You do nothing but watch other videos on how the earth is flat 24/7. The AI doesn't know, nor has the capacity to know, if this concept is true or not. The algorithm simply recommends more of the same content. Since you, the user, doesn't know this and only sees more flat earth content, you become more entrenched in your beliefs, as all you see is your opinion being stated as correct. This isn't an infinite loop, however, as eventually the machine will spew out a video going against your ideas. But this is where human behavior actively rejects these challenges, which further pushes themselves into their ideas. This is known as self-censorship, and with the advent of the internet, it has become easier for people to block off any form of challenges against their own beliefs. People have been censoring their opponents for centuries. This, along with the fact that people tend to fuse their identities with their beliefs, the more extreme someone's ideas become, gives those people a reason to use censorship as a way to protect their own sense of self. However, the internet provides a unique situation where censorship is not only easier, but more accessible for the general public.
And the guy that just called me Kratos, by the way.
This is all told in a paper, Censoring Political Opposition Online, Who Does It and Why. The paper states that people often find themselves in online bubbles of individuals who share political beliefs and information with each other, but not with outsiders. They also actively seek out communities online that support their pre-existing opinions, and follow or connect with individuals whose opinions they endorse. And when they process information that they encounter, they display confirmation biases that warp their visions of reality. People will tend to flock towards others with similar beliefs, seeking out people that have the same views. The tendency of people to seek out like-minded individuals is heightened as a person's own beliefs become more radical. This is explained by the excerpt. For people who are strongly fused with a cause, threats to the cause will feel like threats to the self. This will induce strongly fused people to be particularly reactive to threatening content. They may, for instance, go to great lengths to protect their group, and even attempt to inflict serious harm on threatening out groups. Therefore, we expect that strongly fused individuals will be especially apt to selectively censor incongruent content to preserve their cause against challenges. This phenomenon of self-censorship among groups applies to the digital world as well. Some social media sites, such as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Threads, are all places where people can sometimes form these groups. One more notable example, and the one covered in the paper, is Reddit.
Clock strikes 12. Midnight arrives. Clock you.
Per the paper, as public pages and forums are increasingly moderated by everyday citizens, the power to censor others is now widely available. For example, on the popular social media platform Reddit, almost 100,000 community moderators have the power to delete comments or entirely ban accounts associated with millions of users. Even internet users who have no particular stature within online communities are able to moderate other people's comments on their own posts and blogs. People can report social media posts that they find disagreeable, or simply delete or hide cause incongruent comments on their own posts or blogs. Given that censorship in online context is easier and may have fewer personal repercussions relative to offline context, it seems likely that online censoring will become increasingly prevalent. This is nice to know, but what does this really mean? I mean, does it really matter if some people on Reddit decide to go 1984 on some random forums? Whether or not this has an effect in and of itself is debatable. But some people can describe this increase in people's urges to seemingly silence any opposition is a symptom of a growing divide in the country's political parties. Before I continue, I want to address the elephant in the room, and that is the fact that the internet can be easily fabricated. We already know how things like alternate accounts exist.
You fool! I have 70 alternative accounts!
Where people may try and create multiple quote-unquote people to make their ideas seem more reasonable, along with the rise of botted accounts, or accounts run by code to do nothing more than spread a message. I understand that media can in fact be fabricated, but hopefully by using mainly peer-reviewed academic sources, I can better show how the symptoms the current internet landscape has created. Although some accounts online may be fake, the data shows how the effects can be very much real. With that out of the way, I can now discuss how there is evidence that the main two US political parties have become more polarized over the years. The article, The Polarization in Today's Congress, has roots that go back decades. States that House Democrats, for example, moved about from negative 0.31 to negative 0.38, meaning that over time, they've become modestly more liberal on average. House Republicans, by contrast, moved from 0.25 to nearly 0.51, a much bigger increase in the conservative direction. This excerpt describes how the two main political parties and their Congress members, Democrats and Republicans, have changed how extreme their ideas are since the 70s. Both parties have moved towards the more extreme ends of their respective ideas, with Republicans moving more towards the extreme Democrats. This, in turn, has erased what little middle ground there already was, told by the quote, "As Democrats have grown more liberal and Republicans much more conservative, the middle, where moderate to liberal Republicans could sometimes find common ground with moderate to conservative Democrats on contentious issues, has vanished. This shift in political parties create less common ground to use in order to promote discussion and hopefully cooperation. This polarization become an issue, as this lack of common ground can make it hard for either party to cooperate with each other, ultimately slowing down the work of the government. This polarization is reflected in how politicians speak, as many speeches have gone away from focusing on logic and reading in return for more emotional semantics. This is explored in the research paper, Emotion and Reason in Political Language. The paper takes notice of this increase in emotionality from the 70s, stating that emotionality makes a slow but steady increase up to the 1950s, then drops a bit in the early 1970s, and then starts a more rapid increase starting in the late 1970s, that continues until the present. This striking pattern is seen for both chambers. The trend break is especially salient for the House of Representatives and is followed with some delay by the Senate. This is a particularly ominous statistic, as it means that politicians are now starting to feed into this trend more, by using language that can stifle actual discussion, furthering the issue stated tenfold. Now that we are aware of what's happening, what can we do? It's true that tensions have been rising in recent years, but that doesn't mean to start talking about the end of the world just yet. By being aware from hopefully paying attention to this video, you can be prepared to now take this knowledge into the real world. The next time you see any content online that could be hateful, remember to try and remove it from your feed in order to tell those algorithms to not promote it to you, which can help prevent your feeds becoming echo chambers. Along with this, try to remember that the internet can be a web of fabricated lies, and to always keep an open mind no matter your beliefs. Hopefully, a collective effort from people to stop this trend can help reduce tensions in the modern day political environment, and maybe even help others learn to get along better.
Yeah.